I am here with Kate, host of the broadcast live on her YouTube channel, Girl with a Microphone, where she covers a wide range of topics, specifically for this conversation, politics, this election. And I'm very pleased to be having this discussion revolving around those things. I do want to start by saying thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
Yes, and I'm excited as well. So I kind of want to cover and just because I do a lot of conversations on my channel, but it's mostly with I'm either like very formally interviewing people or talking to people I very much so disagree with. So I like having these kind of discussions with somebody who's more so on my side. And I want to get through talking about some of the more like hotbed issues in this election and politics now. So let's just start with I guess the biggest thing as of recent, but and then work our way to where now is, of course, with what are your thoughts on kind of the unprecedented way Joe Biden dropped out and all of that?
Yeah. Well, I will say that I was here in Massachusetts, I was an uncommitted voter. So I was already not enjoying Joe Biden. I mean, I didn't vote for him in the primaries. And then with everything happening in Gaza, I wanted to take a stand against how he's been handling it. So for me, I was hoping he would step down a lot sooner because, hundreds of thousands of people voted no confidence essentially in him. So I was hoping it would happen sooner, but then seeing how it happened made a lot of sense because I don't know if this was done intentionally, but they seem to have waited until after the Republican National Convention. And I remember first we had, Trump being shot, whatever happened. And then we had the convention and there was so much momentum, right? Like around the Republicans. And I just saw so much despair and everyone being like, oh my God, he won, it's over. And then this gets announced, and like there's this new, and Kamala stepping in, there's like this new energy. And the Republicans are not going to get another chance like that big public stage. So for me, it feels like it was the right decision. And despite what I thought a few months ago, I think it was also the right time.
I personally agree with you. I also didn't vote for Biden in the primary. I voted for Marianne Williamson, just to
Yeah.
put that out there for people. Because I was like, I mean, I consider myself to the left of Joe Biden, and I think he did some good things with his presidency. I don't think it's terrible. He definitely lost me. I'm sure, like kind of how it sounds with you, lost
Yeah.
me after October 7th with his response to Israel and Gaza and things like that. But despite that, I was looking forward to him dropping out. And about him dropping out, I also wanted to ask, what were your thoughts on Kamala Harris stepping in? Was she the candidate you would have wanted? And then just personally, her versus Biden, what are your opinions?
Well, I will say I'm an Elizabeth Warren girl till I die. So
Mhm.
I mean, I knew she wasn't even a contender, but I was like, oh God, I would love that.
Yes.
For me, it seemed like the logical choice given how much time was left. I remember back in the primaries 4 years ago that she was slightly left of Biden. I mean, she was talking about universal health care, banning fracking. So I was encouraged by that. It does sound like she's walked some of that back and isn't as um progressive as she was on the campaign trail originally, and I'm still waiting to see what her policies are. She hasn't really released a ton of them. She's talked a little bit about economic stuff. She's really focusing on that, which I think is smart. Overall, I think she's an improvement to Biden, but she's not, I mean, she's not my number one by a long shot.
Yeah, and I think that's how a lot of people feel, but I think she is a better option than Biden. Also, and fingers crossed that she's running more as a moderate to maybe give us like a larger tint of voters, and then she'll do more progressive things when she gets in office. And I did want to ask also in terms of like electability, do you think her stepping in helps our chances, like rather than what we had with Biden, or do you think it kind of the unprecedented nature might hurt us more? What side of the fence are you on?
Yeah, I think the Republicans and especially the Republican bots on social media would like us to think that it's bad and that somehow democracy has been taken away from us Democrats and we didn't have a choice in this. But overall, it seems like she is very electable. And I think it's a good reminder because I remember when Biden was running for in the primary, everyone was saying Biden is the only person who can beat Trump. He's the only one. We need another old white guy or we're going to lose.
And the
And
rematch
now,
nobody wanted.
Exactly. The rematch no one asked for. And here we are with a younger woman of color running, and she is crushing Biden in the polls. So we can't we can't give into fear of thinking we need to run the same kind of person against whoever's running on the other side. So I would say it seems like based on the polling, based on the momentum and excitement and the money she's raising, she is definitely a worthy candidate, a worthy opponent to Trump right now.
Yeah, yeah. The parts that I would add to that is I think running the like status quo candidate against Trump isn't the right way. I think we did that in 2016 with Hillary, like the most status quo candidate you could, and we saw how that turned out. I think in 2020 we lucked out with how bad Trump handled COVID, kind of lost him the presidency there. And I was worried in 2024 that it seemed like it was either going to be too close for comfort or we were going to lose by a lot if we ran Biden again. So I was kind of glad that he stepped out. Now, the other half of her ticket, I also wanted to ask you about. What were your thoughts on the Tim Walz pick? I know I have my opinions. More so, I was really happy with it just because I didn't want Josh Shapiro with some of the ways he talked about student protesters, Mark Kelly with how he was anti-union. So I was really happy with it, but I am curious your opinion on it.
Yeah, from what I know of him, I really like Tim Walz. I think he's a smart pick in the sense of strategy, but he also seems very genuine and he's done a lot of progressive work in Minnesota. I mean, he got all the kids in Minnesota free breakfast and lunch. He got family leave for everybody in the state, both to recover from your own illness and to take care of other people. So he's done a lot of great work in Minnesota. I hope this isn't the one bone that they throw progressives. That's my one fear is like, we gave you Tim Walz, now let us court all these Republican votes, you know? But like you, I agreed. I was worried it was going to be Shapiro. Um, and I was really unhappy with how he handled the protests at Penn. So I think that this was another surprising choice. So on the heels of Biden stepping down, then we get this very progressive vice president. I was very encouraged by this, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think it helped with the momentum at least and kind of bringing back that side of the base that Biden by that point had definitely lost. I do want to also ask, focusing on kind of the election still and stuff, what do you think that Kamala, the campaign, needs to focus on, or even Democrats as a whole down ballot? Like, what's the issue you think needs to be pushed as kind of the main focus?
I wish that Kamala's team and the rest of the Democratic Party were talking more about how important it is that we expand our majority in the Senate, because without the ability to block a filibuster, without having 60 votes, we can't do any of the stuff, the big things that they're promising, like, improving the Supreme Court, protecting reproductive rights in the Constitution. If we want constitutional amendments and if we want to take some big swings and win, we can't do it with 51 to 50 majority. Like, we need the 60 votes or the Republicans are just going to filibuster everything. And there's so much money flowing in for Kamala. And I'm just hopeful that they start talking about these down ticket races and the importance of getting more seats. I'm doing a fundraiser right now for 10 Senate seats, Republican held right now, that are up for reelection, because I just don't see anybody talking about it or raising money. And I think it's really important.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, especially with losing Joe Manchin, even though I mean he might as well have been a Republican with the
Yeah.
Democrat by his name, and then like the cinema seat being up and these things, I think that a lot of people don't realize that without the 60 seats, Republicans can just refuse to play ball and we can't get a lot done. Even though I think if we beat Trump and like he kind of goes away, they'll be a little more willing to play ball. But with today's Republican Party, you never really know. Are there any seats, I guess, specifically in the Senate, or I know you said there were 10 you were doing a fundraiser for. What do you think are like the most flippable seats, or what ones do you think people should be keeping their eyes on?
Yeah, I mean, people say that Missouri is a big one. There are two seats in Nebraska right now. I'm not sure how likely those are to flip, but both Nebraska Senate seats are up for reelection. I would love to get rid of Ted Cruz. I know people think that that's impossible to get rid of a Texas Republican senator, but his opponent, Colin Allred, has outraised him every single quarter that he's been in the race. So I think it's possible. I think it's possible. I would also like to see the demon in Florida, Rick Scott, get kicked out. So I mean, yeah, I mean, for me, it's less about what's most likely and which people seem the most dangerous. And I hope that people start looking more closely at these races.
Yeah, and then I wanted to ask you on the other side of the same coin in a way, and I'll split up into two questions because Trump is kind of separate from the Republican Party in terms
Mm.
of like, I don't know, the attacks for Trump and the attacks for the Republican Party are different. So starting with the Republican Party, what do you think is their biggest weakness coming into this election?
I think they went too hard on women's rights. They seem to be going down this path where they're also starting to go after like recreational sex. So
Mhm.
it's not even just like birth and also birth control, IVF, like whether or not Trump has the in his platform to attack IVF and other things, that's what they've been branded with. And I think that the Democrats have done a really good job of pushing on that stuff because across red and blue states, protecting abortion is popular. And we've seen that every time it's been on the ballot. It's won. It's gotten into the constitutions of these states, even in red states. So they screwed the pooch with getting Roe v. Wade overturned. I think they went too hard on that. So that's a huge weakness for them. Also, Project 2025. I know that Trump just keeps trying to distance himself from it. He's getting people fired over there that wrote it. I think that that's another thing that is going to be really hard to get unstuck from. And I don't think that he's going to manage to do it.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I always push on my channel about how, like, after Roe v. Wade was overturned, the Republicans underperformed in the midterms that year.
Mhm.
They have lost every ballot referendum that it's been on, the special elections they've lost. And I agree with you also on Project 2025. He can deny it all he wants. It's the truth of the matter is that at first he said he's never heard of it, yet all his advisors, everyone in his campaign were the authors, the people he's saying he's going to appoint to positions, wrote the thing. So I think what his plan is that he's going to appoint people to these positions. They're going to do the things that are in Project 2025, and he'll just never say the name.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, so for Trump, would you think that it's his weakness is the same, or do you have one that you think might be different for him?
I mean, it seems like people are I hope. It seems like based on what we saw at the DNC, it seems like people are sick of Trump. It seems like Republicans are starting to pull away from him and all the ridiculousness. So I think it's similar. I think that he is just too wrapped up in Project 2025. Like you said, tons of his advisors. He's been, photographed on private planes with the director of the Heritage Foundation. He speaks at their events. So he can't get that off of himself. So I think Project 2025 is probably going to be one of his biggest downfalls.
Do you think that with the sentencing coming up this month or in a few weeks, maybe I think it is even, I don't think any of the other cases will go to trial, but with this sentencing, 34 felony counts, do you think that this hurts him at all, or do Republicans just shrug that off like most other things?
Yeah, I looked at some data, some polling that came out like before and after we learned that he was going to be convicted. And it's September 18th as of right now. I don't know if it's going to get moved again. I know they're pushing for that. It does seem like it seems like Republicans are just sort of digging their heels in and they're not changing their minds. But the interesting mover is independent votes. It's the people that usually vote Republican, but they have said, at least in the polls that I saw, that Trump being convicted does change the way they see him and will impact how they vote. Hopefully that means that they will not vote for him and that they aren't like super excited for him. So I think that is definitely another variable. It's not going to change many Republicans' minds because they're so far in, they're so deep in. But I think the independent votes will be something to watch for sure.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think at this point, Republicans, at least like MAGA Republicans, are unmovable, especially, I mean, after like sexual assault, after fraud, after now 34 felonies. I just don't think that they care after the 2020 election, him trying to steal it and all that. Like it doesn't matter. I did want to ask, what do you think is the biggest threat that Trump poses, say he wins? What do you think should people be worried about the most?
Well, we've seen what he does, right? We already know. It's not like in 2016 where it was, like all hypothetical. We know what a Trump presidency feels like and looks like. And I just remember it as every day was something new and horrible. It really seemed like at least multiple times a week we would wake up and someone was banned from the country. He had done something horrible. There was some new executive order that made no sense. He was pardoning some horrible person. So I think we know what it looks like. And I think that if what we know plus what we read in both the Republican platform and Project 2025, if even a fraction of that comes true, that's the scariest thing. That's mass deportations. That's the destabilization of the entire public education system. That's even more deregulation, which we're seeing impact us now in all of these like foodborne illness outbreaks and airplanes falling out of the sky, right? Like it's just going to get worse. It's going to be 2016 but worse, I think.
Yeah, that's another thing I always try to tell people, especially like with the mass deportations. Like I think a lot of people don't understand like what that would have to look like for it to happen at the level he's saying. Like ICE would be like walking the streets, card checking people who like
Yeah.
don't speak English or like look like an immigrant, and it would just be craziness. I don't know. Like that's the Gestapo, if you ask me. I'm just
Well,
saying.
yeah, and I think it would also be, neighbors reporting on each other. I mean, it would be like this whole mass hysteria. And also, I mean, Trump's talked about it and it's in Project 2025 that they want to fire all of these like tens of thousands of federal employees and replace them with loyalists
Yep.
who will just do whatever Trump wants because that was a problem for him last time. He was having to fire all these people who were standing up to him. So it's I don't know how realistic it is when he says you won't ever have to vote again. Like I know that Democrats are hammering that really hard. I think that was him just being an idiot, and I'm glad that he did that soundbite. But for me, it's definitely more the concrete stuff that he said about deportations and firing all these federal employees and all that stuff.
Yeah, and as you said, Joe Biden didn't drop out until after the RNC, and I think for me personally, I think Trump probably would have chosen a different VP had he known that it wasn't going to be Biden he was running against. Do you think that he regrets the JD Vance pick?
Every day. I think he's itching to fire JD Vance. I'm honestly surprised he hasn't done it. I will be surprised if he doesn't find a way to do it. I mean, it should be more difficult because after the convention, everything's supposed to be more or less locked in. But oh my God, he's just embarrassing him every step. I mean, that's JD Vance is definitely something that's going to impact the election. He's just so bad.
Yeah, he really the most unfavorable VP of all time, I think, and the only reason I think that Trump won't fire him is because it would be like admitting defeat or like failure on his part, and I don't
Yeah.
know if he has it in him to do that. So I
Yeah.
think he might be like, well, I just have to write it out then.
It's so bad. So yeah, I am happy with the pick. I'm very happy with that very short-sighted pick, and I love how angry it's probably making Trump.
Yes, exactly. What do you think? What are your thoughts on the upcoming debate? Do you have high hopes for it? Are you thinking that Kamala's going to crush him? Do you think it happens? I know Trump is, I
Yeah.
don't know if you've seen, but in some speeches, he's like, well, I'd love to surprise her and not even go and things like that. So, what are your thoughts on the debate?
Yeah, he's been doing the usual Trump thing where he's trying to discredit it ahead of time, so he doesn't seem like a wuss when he backs out. So I haven't thought much about it because I kind of don't think it's going to happen. If it does happen, he's definitely going to get crushed. I mean, Kamala was a prosecutor. She is a very skilled public speaker, a very skilled public arguer, and she actually has policies and facts and figures, and that is where Trump struggles. He's also going to struggle because it's very easy to insult another old white guy and get away with it. But like it's a fine line to walk when you're talking to a black woman, you know, and
Especially
it
for
still
him.
come off as not a total racist. So it'll be interesting. I hope it happens. I'll have my popcorn ready, but I'm not I'm not holding my breath.
It's especially a fine line for him with like he seems to have to bring up her race. Oh, she's not even black, she's an Indian. He has to talk about like I mean Republicans tried to drill home the whole like DEI hire thing, bringing up she's a woman, like all these things, and he's just gonna seem like the bumbling old delusional man on the stage this time if it happens, I think, which will be like poetic almost, seeing as he formed the first half of this campaign all around calling the other guy old and delusional, and now it's his turn.
Yep, totally.
So I have one more question for you. I wanted to ask if you think if Trump loses in November, do you think the MAGA movement ends there? Do you think it starts to die off, or do you think like another candidate like a Vivek Ramaswamy or someone who's willing to carry water for Trump brings it back in 2028?
Well, I think the only close reference we have is like the Tea Party, right? Where they had a surge around the time of Sarah Palin, and then they kind of fizzled out. But I don't think it ever goes away. I think that it always comes back in new forms, especially when progress happens. So like when Barack Obama got elected, that's when the Tea Party stuff started. If Kamala wins, there's going to be some sort of racist backlash, right? Like and misogynist as well. So I don't think they'll go away. I think that they will lick their wounds, and maybe, hopefully, more of them will be pulled off of him if he doesn't have a microphone, especially if he's in prison. That would be really cool
Yeah.
because if he's not out here on Truth Social every day, I think that would have more of an effect than him losing the election, because him not having access to the public constantly would help maybe unbrainwash some of these people. But there will always be this kind of like alt-right racist bullshit going on for sure.
Yeah, I do. I agree with you. I think that at this point he is kind of running to stay out of prison. So I think the chance that he goes if he loses is pretty high. And I have two things. First, I just noticed the cat ears on your glasses. I want to say I love those. That's really awesome.
Republicans hate them.
What?
Hate them. That's like their new thing to talk about me. So,
Well, that's
thank
that's
you.
just another reason to wear them then. If
Thank you. I
Republicans hate
know.
them, you're doing something right for sure. And then I just wanted to say thank you again for joining us. For those watching, she is the host of the broadcast live on Girl with a Microphone is her YouTube channel. I will have it linked in the description. If you have any other links you want me to add, just send me them on Instagram and I'll put them in the description as well. And
Sure.
thank you for taking the time to speak with me.
Thank you so much. This was awesome, Brandon. It was nice to meet you.
It was nice to meet you as well, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. Bye.